Today, we're going to uncover a story that's been hidden deep inside Christianity for centuries. It's a story that might just challenge a lot of what we think we know, but it could also offer a richer, more profound way to understand faith itself. Now, take a look at this quote. This isn't from some modern-day skeptic. This is from St. Augustine, one of the most important figures in the entire history of the Church. He said the true religion, which was already in existence, began to be called Christian. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. What on earth did he mean by that? So, yeah, how could one of Christianity's most revered saints make a claim like that? What did he know that maybe we don't? Well, to find the answer, we have to take a journey way back in time, long before the Gospels were ever written. To really get what Augustine was saying, we have to start with a story that was being told long, long before the Christian era. We need to dive into a world of myth and symbol that thrived for thousands of years in one place in particular, ancient Egypt. Think about it. The core stories of Jesus, the virgin birth, the miracles, the crucifixion, the resurrection, they feel so unique, right? Tied to one specific person at one specific time in history. But what if that whole narrative is actually an echo of a much, much older song? And this brings us to the key figure in all of this ancient spiritual heritage, the Egyptian god Horus. As you're about to see, his story is really the key that unlocks this entire mystery. For literally thousands of years before Christianity, the main image of worship in Egypt was the divine mother, Isis, holding her miraculous son, Horus. This image of the Madonna and child, which is such a cornerstone of Christian art, was actually a central theme in Egyptian religion for millennia. And the parallels go way beyond just imagery. Just take a look at this. Both Horus and Jesus were said to be born of a virgin. Both of their births were announced by a star in the east. Both were baptized by a figure who was later beheaded. Both had 12 followers. They both performed miracles like healing the sick and walking on water. And ultimately, both were crucified and then resurrected. And this is just a short list. The source material points out nearly 200 parallels just like these. It's pretty staggering. The connection even gets down to the language itself. The letters KRST were found written on Egyptian mummy coffins centuries before the Christian era. In those ancient languages, where vowels were often left out, this word becomes Christ or Christ. And you know what it meant? The anointed one, someone prepared for resurrection. It really seems like the very title Christ has Egyptian roots. Even Christianity's most sacred symbols were around long before the religion itself. The cross, in forms like the Egyptian ankh, was a universal symbol of eternal life for thousands of years. But maybe the most shocking thing is the Cairo, that famous monogram for Christ. Well, it's been found on coins that were minted by King Herod the Great, decades before Jesus was supposedly even born. Okay, so if the stories and the symbols are so incredibly similar, what happened? What changed? And that brings us to our second part, the big shift from myth to history. How did this ancient symbolic story become the literal biography of one person? I mean, this is the million-dollar question, right? If these themes were part of a universal mythos, a symbolic story about the soul's journey, how did they get pinned to one man, Jesus of Nazareth, at one specific moment in time? Well, the argument is that early on, around the 3rd and 4th centuries, a huge decision was made. To grow the new religion and win over the masses, church leaders took what was esoteric, this inner symbolic wisdom, and they made it exoteric, meaning literal and easy for everyone to grasp. And this wasn't just a friendly change in interpretation. It was enforced. Sources describe a really systematic effort to erase the story's pagan origins. We're talking about shutting down philosophical schools, persecuting anyone who followed the old mystery religions, and burning hundreds of thousands of books that held this original allegorical wisdom. And this is the fundamental difference. The original myth was a symbolic truth, an allegory about an inner journey that's available to every single one of us. The Christ was this divine potential inside every soul. But when that myth got turned into history, it became a literal fact about a single external person. A universal potential became a unique, one-time event. But here's the thing. Understanding this doesn't have to diminish faith. Actually, it can unlock a much, much deeper layer of meaning. So let's talk about how to read these stories allegorically and decode what they're really trying to tell us. Okay, let's take a quick example. The prodigal son. Literally, it's a beautiful story about forgiveness, right? But if you read it symbolically, the far country he travels to is our life here in the material world. And the Father? That's the divine spirit we all came from. So the story isn't just about one son, it's the beautiful myth of every soul's journey into physical life and its eventual, celebrated return home. You see, reading the scriptures this way doesn't take away their power at all. It actually magnifies it. A miracle performed by one person 2,000 years ago, that can feel a little distant. But an allegory about the divine power to heal and transform that exists inside of you, now that becomes incredibly personal and relevant right here, right now. And all of this leads us to the ultimate point, the true heart of all this ancient wisdom, the discovery of what's called the Christ within you. After everything we've looked at, we have to face the big question, don't we? Does all of this mean the story of Jesus is false? And the answer, according to this perspective, is a powerful no. It's not about true versus false. It's about seeing that the Gospels aren't meant to be literal history, but a sublime myth. And a myth isn't a lie. It's a story that carries a truth too big and too profound for just ordinary language. So the big shift in perspective is this. The story stops being about an external historical man that we're meant to worship from afar. Instead, it becomes an allegorical roadmap to help you discover and activate a universal divine principle that's already inside yourself. The goal isn't to worship Christ, but to realize the Christ within. We'll end with this amazing quote from the 17th century mystic Angelus Silesius, because it just captures this idea perfectly. He's saying the historical events are basically meaningless unless they become a living reality inside of you. The true journey, as this ancient wisdom suggests, isn't about looking back to a cross on a hill somewhere, but about setting up that cross within yourself and then discovering the resurrection that always follows.